Up next, we would like to talk about a very important subject for this part of the world because, inarguably, the past few decades, China has become one of the world's leaders in digital technology. So our first talk this afternoon is called Will China Take Over the World? Inside the Nation Driving Technology and Innovation. Today we are honored to have with us an expert on this subject. He is a general partner at SOSV and the managing director of China Accelerator, which is China's first startup accelerator. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a big round of applause to Mr. William Bao Bean.
Hello. So they gave me a wonderful topic. Is China going to take over the world? So we're going to walk through a couple ideas, hopefully spur some thought and conversation. So my name is William Bean. I'm a general partner at SOSV. We're a venture capital fund. We invest globally, and I run China Accelerator, which helps companies from all around the world enter China. We also help companies enter Southeast Asia and South Asia as well. So I've been in the China market a long time. When I started covering China internet, the total value of all the internet companies in China, the total market cap was only $3 billion. This is 2004. Today it's surpassed $2 trillion. So it's been a wild ride. So this is a report I did back in 2005 on Tencent. At that time, it was a little bit over a $1 billion company, and today it's a $400 billion company. So today we're going to talk about China. China is the number 2 largest economy in the world. It's growing about $2 trillion versus the U.S., which is growing a lot slower. And what's one of the major drivers? Well, it's the internet. To give you some context, these are the values of some of the largest companies in the world. So Amazon's pretty close to $1 trillion. Google's way up there. But Tencent and Alibaba, they're actually down about 20%, probably because of the recent trade war and also Tencent's problems with games. But they're $400 billion companies. And in fact, if you look at the top 20 companies, internet companies in the world, half of them are Chinese. And I don't think most people understand this, the scale and the size. And most of the American flags up there, those are global companies. At least until now, the Chinese companies are focused on China. So what's this? The U.S. venture capital firms every year invest roughly $80 billion in startups. Now, China numbers are a little bit tough to measure, but China VCs in the last year invested somewhere around $60 billion. So China is the number 2 VC market in the world. It's about 4 or 5 times of Europe combined and relatively close to the US. So what is this? So we heard before lunch about e-banking. Well, is the US ahead? Is China ahead? Well, this is annual usage of wallets, mobile wallets in the US. So the total amount of money going over mobile wallets in the U.S. is roughly $50 billion a year, and it's growing. This is China. Each year, $12.5 trillion going over mobile wallets. So U.S. used to be 1/50th the size of China. Now they're catching up, and China is only 20 times larger than the U.S. in mobile wallets. So we call this leapfrogging. How many internet users in China? There are a lot, and they're still growing. So 800 million internet users, and these users are what we call mobile first, mobile only. Actually, PC usage is declining on an absolute basis in China. Everybody's on their mobile phone all day, every day. So the only way that people in China access the mobile phone is generally, internet is generally on a mobile phone. So where has China traditionally been behind? Advertising, but they're catching up. Enterprise, but enterprise is starting to take off. Software and SaaS, these are areas of opportunity, but traditionally, Chinese companies didn't pay for third-party software. But where is China ahead? China's way ahead in social. In fact, if you look at the product roadmap and the feature launch for Facebook for the last 3 years, it looks like a giant WeChat clone. So in social, China leads American or global companies significantly. FinTech, because there wasn't traditional banking infrastructure, no consumer credit, no small, medium business credit, China has moved very quickly in this area. Of course, hardware, Shenzhen is the hardware capital of the world, and blockchain. In fact, Beijing courts are already using blockchain as evidence in cases. So let's drill down into Tencent. So Tencent, $400 billion company, okay? Last quarter, Q1, they did $12.7 billion in revenue. They're having a tough time because of games, but they're still growing 16% year on year. This is amazing for a company of this size. So if you go back 5-6 years and you looked at Tencent, it's not a traditional top-down company, okay? So 5-6 years ago, they had 519 product groups, and each product group acts almost like an independent startup within Tencent. And WeChat started off as an independent startup. So all these companies, they get a staff, a team, an area of focus, and they get resources. And if they do well, then they end up like WeChat. And WeChat not only would kill startups around it, but it would also kill other companies, other product teams within Tencent. So WeChat is now what we call a super app. So it started off in messaging, but one of the biggest problems, one of the biggest challenges with internet is customer acquisition cost. So the customer acquisition cost is usually up here, and the revenue is down here. So if you have, like Tencent, all the users are ready, the cost of adding another service is basically zero. So Tencent started off with messaging, and now they do everything. They've got over 1 billion users, and they've gone from 0 to 40% payment share now, and they basically kicked Alibaba's butt. Okay, so what's Alibaba going to do? A lot of people say Jack Ma's retired. Well, Jack Ma is spending a lot of time focused on Southeast Asia. Alibaba is focused on India. So are the Chinese going to take over the world? Well, you'll be the judge. But if you look at, this is some old data, but if you look at smartphone shipments in India, the local players used to have 50% market share. 50% market share. Now, there are local brands like Micromax, and they were buying from China and selling in India, and they were making money on hardware, and they had 50% market share. Now it's down to 4%. Okay? And how did this happen? It's because of companies like Xiaomi. So Xiaomi is now the #1 smartphone brand in India. It's actually also the #1 in Spain. But they're out there in public saying, we're selling $300 handsets, the best features, the best screens, the best processors, a lot of memory, and they're selling them for $150. So how do you possibly compete? You can't. And so the Indian smartphone brands went from 50% market share, they fluctuate somewhere between 4 and 6% market share now. But it's not just the phone. So you've got #1 Xiaomi, #2 Samsung, and then there's Oppo, Vivo, Huawei. So 4 of the top 5 in India are Chinese players. But it's also the apps. So if you go back to 2016, only a handful of the top apps in India were Chinese. But by 2017, it was about 14 of the top 100 apps in India were Chinese. In 2018, that grew to 44. So 44 of the top apps in India are Chinese. And then you have a bunch of American ones. The problem is, where are the Indian ones? Okay? The local players are getting their butts kicked. If you go to social, it's the same story. So 2017, there's like 2 out of the top 10 social apps in India were Chinese. 2018, that grew to 5 of the top 10. So what's happening in India? What's happening in Indonesia? Well, you've got the first sort of war. It's the first place on earth where you've got Google, Facebook, and Amazon, to some extent, going face-to-face, toe-to-toe with Chinese companies. And it's generally proxy battles. What does that mean? Well, the Chinese companies are not going directly in with their own products, except for maybe TikTok. You've got local companies, local startups like yours, backed by China tech and Chinese money. Okay. So where is the opportunity for all of you within this? Well, if you're a startup, most of you, the people here are startups, the first opportunity is investment. This is a new world order. The local players are getting smaller, so you need to figure out, who your godfather is going to be, who your godmother is going to be. So one of the ways to succeed is to ally yourself with one of the major players and take their investment. You'll lose a bit of your independence, but you'll be able to survive and probably flourish. Because you look at Silicon Valley, we have a trade war. What's been one of the impacts of the trade war? Well, last year, 2018, Chinese VCs invested $3 billion into Silicon Valley startups. And that's basically gone to pretty close to zero. Okay, so where is that money going today? If you go to China Accelerators demo days in Shanghai, we have a VC panel every time. And basically every single VC in China talking about what the future is, and they're telling us stories about their investments in India. They're telling us stories about their investments in Southeast Asia. So you're getting a lot of money coming south. Now, in China, when you take money and you become a part of either the Ali group or the Tencent group, a lot of times they help out with user acquisition. In Southeast Asia, probably less so, but they're putting in big checks, and that's allowing startups who take those checks to buy users. And so if you're not taking a big check, you're not going to be able to get the users. The second thing is best practices, so technology. So when Didi went into Brazil in '99, they did an investment in '99, which is the #1 car sharing in Brazil. And what did they do? They airdropped 57 engineers into Brazil, and they rebuilt the '99 platform from the bottom up. Okay? So it looks like a Brazilian company, it talks like a Brazilian company, but inside it's a Chinese company with Chinese capital, and they did such a great job that Didi then bought 99. So what does the Chinese bring? Not just money, but they're also bringing machine learning. Now, it might not be the best machine learning in the world, but in China, if you're not using machine learning to drive personalization in your product right now, you're not competitive. Well, they're bringing these practices down south so they can help you and your startup, potentially, with personalization. And personalization means better performance, better product. Now, we'll see what happens, but we've already seen a number of exits or partial exits to Chinese investors. Ali, especially, to some extent, Tencent's been a bit more focused on China and taking a passive minority stakes. But Alibaba has been quite aggressive, and you'll hear from Ant Financial in the panel after mine. So where are the areas of opportunity? Well, just look at the China playbook. E-commerce, big one. Where's the money? Financial services, microloans, remittance. This is where we're focused. Payment, how do you pay for stuff? Not just that, but in emerging markets like in Indonesia and Malaysia, transportation is like 20 to 30% of GDP because there's too many islands. So logistics is a huge problem, and we're focused on that. And then there's health. There's an opportunity with technology to leapfrog health. And then the final area, it's not so glamorous, but it's media. Because when you get a smartphone, what's the first thing you do with it? What do Indians spend their time on? Well, they get their smartphone, and 60% of their data usage is watching TV. Okay? These are the areas that we're focused on. Our advice is, it's great to be an independent company, but be aware that the environment in Southeast Asia and India is changing. You need to do the startup thing, solve a problem, bring a solution, okay? But be aware that there are very large players with very large checkbooks, and they're running a playbook. And so you should position yourself in the context of their playbook. So for us, I have a couple of minutes left. So we're global. We invest globally. We invest through our accelerators. So I run China Accelerator and Mox. We help companies go cross-border. If you think about a super app starts with a trusted brand and one service. And what do they provide? Free customer acquisition. Okay, so what we're trying to do with Mox is in the context of a world full of super apps, we are a loose confederation of two groups. Startups on one side, and they need user acquisition, and companies, local companies on the other side, like magazine brands, media brands, telcos, even retail stores, and they need internet revenue because they're coming under pressure from the super apps, from Amazon, Facebook, Google, and 5 Chinese players. So what Mox is a partnership between the startups who need the users and the corporates, the platforms who have the users but need an internet business model. So we help out with an accelerator. We are mentor-driven. We have over 600 mentors around the world. We have some experts in residence at work. We give a lot of perks. One of the main things that we do is we help our companies sell and sell into corporates. And these are some of our partners. A lot of these companies have actually invested in our fund. We're pretty large, so we do 150 investments a year, over 850 portfolio companies, and that makes us the number 3 most active lead investor in the world, the number 5 most active seed and angel stage investor in the world. And because of this, at least according to Gust, we're the number 1 accelerator in the world. So with that, I'm going to wrap it up. Thank you very much. And if I can be of help, please let me know. So thanks.